Hey guys, Ben here. A couple of weeks ago, I received an email that I was not expecting. In fact, I thought it was some sort of troll at first. Hey Ben, the Fifth has big news. We're going Swiss made. What? The Fifth watches? The same brand whose rubbish watches were being rammed down my throat a couple of years ago by YouTubers? Yes, it turns out it's them. And surprisingly, this has turned out to be some of the most refreshing news I think I've seen in this space possibly ever. To put this into context for you, if you're not familiar with this brand, they got started in 2014 and used a similar business model to many of these other fashion brands, using social media to sell a ton of low-quality, mass-produced Chinese watches for about 100 quid. And for a time, they only sold on one day of the month, which was the 5th. I first got my hands on one of these watches a couple of years back when my friend Frederick travelled from abroad. He brought along his watch and gave me a look at it. It was rubbish. Even he admitted it, and it was exactly as I'd expected considering the cost that these are likely made for in China. As such, me, along with other creators or whatever, grouped them into the same category as Daniel Wellington, Movement and so on, considering that they were so comparable in terms of price and build quality. Whatever my thoughts on them, this business model was clearly working for them. They were making loads of money, but fair enough, it's just not something I want to recommend on my channel. I recommended alternatives. Therefore, this email came as a shock. I've been saying this for years. If only these companies who are so good at marketing social media and have got evidently a lot of cash would actually put their efforts into something really good, it would be really interesting to see what they could come up with. And maybe they would have a winning formula. I was invited to a video call with this guy called Blake from the Fifth Watches, and he essentially explained to me the process of this decision and why they're going down this route. To my understanding, one of the reasons was they were sick of being grouped into the same category as these other cheap Chinese watches, and as a result, they started questioning the watches that they're actually producing. Are these any good for the consumer, or can we do better? And then the founder of this brand met with Graham Goldman, who is like a prolific figure. He's got lots of experience in the Swiss watch industry, and he was formerly one of the managing directors of the Swatch Group. And combined, this meant that they wanted to improve their products, start phasing out the Chinese stuff, and then introduce some much better quality Swiss-made products. They proposed sending me out some of their Swiss-made watches to take a look at, and I said, you know what, why not send me some of those original Chinese ones, so I've got them here, and we can see how they compare somewhat. They agreed, and here they are. The Chinese-made watches are exactly how I remember. This New York watch, outside of the dial design, could be a Daniel Wellington for all I care. It looks the same, feels the same, and while it is slim, there are better options elsewhere in my opinion, offering better looks and better quality materials for a fraction of the price. This chronograph does have lightly domed glass, which is nice, and does seem slightly less generic. Nevertheless, the strap is an abomination. It feels plasticky, it feels super cheap, just like something that you'd find on a supermarket watch. The piece as a whole is pretty chunky considering that it's only got a quartz movement inside, yet it feels lightweight, also resulting in it feeling cheap. There's no soul to them, there's no reason I'd choose one of these over something like a Timex, which is about half the price, if not cheaper. These feel like cookie cutter watches. That's probably the best way to describe them. So let's chuck them to the side for a minute. Let's take a look at these 3 prototype watches that they've sent me. There are a few things to note with these. Firstly, even though they have sent me these without me having to pay for them, that's no guarantee of positive coverage on this channel. I think my track record pretty much speaks for itself. They haven't paid me any money to say anything positive about the brand either. And obviously these are prototypes, so they are somewhat subject to alterations. In fact, the brand sent me a short list. While these are pretty close to the finished article, they did send me a few things, which is basically their planned upgrade. So I'll pop it on screen now. It's good to see that they're already aware of some of the issues and are working to keep improving their watches. I'm going to go into more detail in each of these over on my wristwatch channel, which I'll link in the video description. First impressions though, outside of the logo, you wouldn't know that these were from the same brand. And that's a good thing. The level of finishing is massively, massively better. The generic fashion watch cases are out and they've been replaced by some really attractive sweeping case designs that feel far more robust. The steel used, whilst apparently the same grade of material, feels a world better. These also come with better water resistance and sapphire glass as standard, which are nice improvements too. They made it clear to me as well that these are intended to be true Swiss-made watches, not one of these Swiss-made where like 20% of the components are actually constructed in Switzerland. They wanted these to be true to the cause and have a dedicated factory over there making them. You can tell the designs have had more thought put into them too. They're not just the generic minimalist fashion watches like you see in like 80% of Instagram brands. The 2 quartz ones aren't quite to my taste. I don't like the peachy colourway on this chronograph, although I didn't have the option to choose what colour I wanted. That being said, they have got ones that look a lot better online. With this colour, I just don't know what it would go with in my wardrobe. The other model's okay as well, it's a little bit slimmer. There's something I can't quite put my finger on with this though. I don't know whether it's the font choice or the choice of hands. There's some inconsistency with the shape somewhere on that dial and it doesn't float my boat. The accuracy of the 2 movements is fantastic though. You'll also notice that these are consistently hitting the second markers, which is something that you just don't find in lower end quartz movements. I cracked one of these open. These are Ronda quartz movements, and whichever ones they've chosen, they seem to be doing a great job. Nevertheless, I can tell you straight away, my favourite out of the 3 is the automatic. I think they've done a really good job with this one, and I think the watch looks awesome. This piece contains a 26 jewel automatic movement, sapphire glass, and 10 ATM water resistance. And it doesn't just look good on paper, it looks great in person. The dial looks awesome with a nice amount of sunburst effect. I think the choice of hands is really smart alongside the colour and the small amount of text as well. It looks really refined. I think this one's had the most amount of thought put into it and it's definitely the one I prefer. Each of these options come with quick release straps. The quality of which is okay. They're definitely better than the previous Chinese made watches, but I wouldn't say they're spectacular. I imagine though for the target market that they're going for, it'll probably be fine. You'll find a link to their Kickstarter and their website in the video description. Backers have got some of these watches at what I think would be really competitive prices, to be honest. At the time of recording this, their product is more than fully funded. There's barely any backing spaces left. They're using that marketing might, I can tell already. There are a couple of challenges that I think the 5th are going to have to overcome though with this project. Firstly, I wonder how their existing audience on social media are going to deal with this change of direction. I'd assume they're following are the type to prioritise looks over the construction or materials involved in watchmaking, and obviously this change in Swiss made is going to substantially increase the retail price of these watches. Potentially they're looking to try and attract an audience that cares slightly more about horology. Either that or try and educate their existing audience. However, I think it's going to be a little bit tricky. These are creeping into the price range of some nice quality Seiko watches, other Swiss made brands like Tissot, and they've got to try and make these a good alternative versus them. I'd imagine they'll approach this through 2 channels. The first being interesting, stylish and unique looking designs, and the second being strong social media marketing. That latter one especially is one that the traditional watch brands really struggle on, so maybe there's an opening there. Either way, it's really interesting to see a brand like this change in focus. Before now, I've offered my honest, negative thoughts on certain watch brands and people have criticised me for just hating on them for no reason. I've always been under the impression if you want something to improve, you've got to give honest and accurate feedback about it. It's clear the 5th have taken on board criticisms or feedback from either reviewers or customers and have acted upon it, and now, rather than just having some boring generic fashion watches, we've actually got something a little bit different. Personally, I would much rather buy into something interesting like these compared to what they were making before. These are the first direct-to-consumer Swiss watches that I've heard of, and at least it's interesting. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to my wristwatch channel so that you can see my full thoughts on these watches in particular. There's a link to that in the video description. I'll see you very soon.